So on the channel recently, we've been talking about the possibility of Emu being a parrot, and I think I found something that might bolster that claim. So in chapter 1182, we actually get the taxonomy of Ragnar's fruit, which is the squirrel fruit mythical type model Ratatoskr. And just tooting my own horn, I did call this verbatim 3 years ago before I think we were even in Elbaf. So moving on. So a little bit before we get the breakdown of Ragnar's Delfruit taxonomy, Emu says to Ragnar, so thou stayed as thou were in days past, waiting for a new master to come along. How familiar thy sight is. And Ragnar responds back with squirrel noises, right? But here's why this conversation by itself, isolated, is weird, because why is the king of the world talking to an animal as if they were an equal? Don't you find that suspicious? Because any other time a character talks to an animal, they would talk to an animal as you or I would talk to an animal. There's an understanding of a certain hierarchy here. But no, he's talking to the squirrel as if the squirrel is his equal. And you can see this in how he addresses Ragnar. He calls Ragnar by name. He doesn't call Ragnar Ratatoskr like he's called Luffy Nika or Loki Nidhogg, nor does he call Ragnar Hammer or Squirrel. He addresses Ragnar by Ragnar's proper name, extending a form of respect to the squirrel, which is weird because this doesn't happen often, especially not to this degree in which the king of the world, the leader of the celestial dragons, is addressing a squirrel by their proper name. It's very odd in that way, which makes me think of Chopper, because Chopper does the same thing, because in his mind, he is a beast, because he is a reindeer that ate the human fruit, making him a zoolinguist that can communicate with other animals as well as humans. So that might be the same case here. He's speaking to Ragnar like this because in possibly being a parrot originally, he knows he himself is a beast, but he can understand what Ragnar is saying because Ragnar too is also a beast, even though he's originally a hammer. So that's why I'm starting to think there's something here. And it's weird that he even stops and has a conversation with a squirrel. Mind you, Emu is supposed to be the king of the world. Why is the king of the world stopping mid-battle to have a light conversation and reminisce upon the past with a squirrel? It doesn't really make sense in context. So that's why I think Emu could possibly be an animal himself, and that's why he's talking to another animal as if he is an equal to him, because they do have history and they're talking like two old warriors reuniting, because that's actually the case, which is very peculiar because if you're just reading through, you really wouldn't think of it like that, but here it is. And I don't think if Emu was a human, he would hold the squirrel in as high a regard as he does, because why would you waste your time? At best, the entity in front of you is a squirrel. At worst, it's just a hammer. It's a tool. And even when you consider the relationship between Loki and Ragnar, Loki doesn't talk to Ragnar like a person. He talks to Ragnar like a partner, like a pet, and he sees him in that way. There's never been anything more than that. He doesn't talk to Ragnar like, say, Luffy would talk to Chopper, because Chopper technically has human understanding and human consciousness. So talking to Chopper like a person makes sense, but talking to Ragnar like a person doesn't make sense. So that's why this conversation between Emu and Ragnar is odd. And I think this is another smoking gun to point to Ragnar possibly knowing that Emu is a animal like him. So I don't know. Take that for what you will, but we'll find more out in the future. But with that being said, if you are enjoying the video so far, click the like button. And if you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button followed by that bell so you never miss a video. In addition to, if you could, hit the hype button because it really does help. And with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Waxing.